Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss how recent events culminating in the UK, France and Ukraine, supported by many others, working on their own peace plan to present to the United States, has cut away the last lingering thread of Brexit arguments. The security of Europe is in a fundamentally different place, and people across politics should put that reality ahead of their own ideology, or adopted ideology. There may even be some signs that they are. But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So, has Donald Trump killed Brexit now? He said last week, when Starmer was there, that people would see that Brexit was the right decision over the centuries. And I thought, mate, Jacob Rees-Mogg promised us benefits in just 50 years. Now you're saying centuries. This deal is no good. And Keir Starmer yesterday hosted major European leaders, along with Trudeau, I did forget he was coming, in a push to club together to help Ukraine literally survive into the next decade. It's very high stakes stuff, only possible with the closest cooperation between, amongst others, the UK and the EU. Right? If Ukraine falls, there is no recovering it later on. The Defence and Security Agreement, which was always seen by Labour as the low-hanging fruit to get our EU reset off the mark, now has added significance. This should be the beginning of the end for Brexit now, surely. I saw a comment piece in the Financial Times before the blow-up on Friday and, of course, yesterday's summer, which made some excellent points about how the right wing need to consider the new reality of Europe and reevaluate the relationship that they want with Europe. Now, my own thoughts about this. Brexit fits into the recent seismic changes into how Europe fits into the rest of the world. You see, almost from literally the moment we left the EU, global events took place which made the situation much worse for us in Britain, specifically because we'd left the EU. It was like throwing your parachute away the day your private plane engines decided to explode, 10,000 feet in the air. You can argue that these things weren't known at the time, but that's like arguing you didn't know your plane engines would explode. It's like, yeah, but they always might. So it would be silly to throw away your parachute. First, COVID made offshoring much less attractive. This meant that the scope for better trade around the world diminished just at the time we were leaving the single market. Then Trump backing Russia in a situation that NATO was explicitly formed to counter. This means Europe has to build up its defence capabilities within a short time frame. And if we all do our own thing individually, we will all have to pay much more money for the duplication. And because we don't have a load of money just to throw into it, that means we actually can't build that defence capability up. It would mean higher taxes, right? No one wants that. Now, I could point out that although neither of these major problems were known as we left the EU, we still should have known better. You know, there aren't the consumers around the rest of the world to compensate for exports lost to trade barriers with the EU. Plus, trade barriers on imports meant the cost of production increased anyway. And Trump was sounding weak on NATO even in his first term. We just weren't in such a high stakes situation at the time, although Ukraine had still been occupied at that time. So this is not a case of Brexit might have worked out all right, but COVID and Trump 2.0 have thrown a spanner in the works. However, if people want to tell themselves that, I'm not so pedantic as to make an issue of it. Actually, I am that pedantic, but I won't anyway. At the very least, the right wing have to fundamentally change their attitude towards America. This does not mean they cannot see the USA as friends, but they must accept that the USA no longer cares about European security. Like the USA is like your addict friend. You might have affection for them, but they are going to screw you over on a regular basis. Don't be dependent on them. The right wing across the Western world always defer to America, at least when there's a Republican in the White House, sometimes regardless. But there is a fundamental difference between the way MAGA Republicans and Republican supporting conservatives in Europe see things on this continent. New German Chancellor Friedrich Merz seems to have made this transition. Conservatives in the UK still seem to be in a little bit of denial, but they may be shifting if Badenoch's statements yesterday are anything to go by. Nigel Farage was never interested in the British interest, so we'll leave him out of the equation for now. But Kemi Badenoch, though she would clearly still like to craft a world where she and Trump could be on the same side, is realising that if Trump forces a choice between America and Europe, the Conservatives understand which continent their fortunes are tied to. Boris Johnson, as noted in this FT comment piece, is still insisting that Trump does see Russia as the aggressor and is playing some mad diplomatic skills to make it all work out. Even after the blow up on Friday, he went over the top in pretending he was on Ukraine's side, but he still implied that the row was Zelensky's fault for not signing the mineral deal, which gave away his country's bargaining power without getting any security in return. Boris Johnson is just like a slimier version of Nigel Farage, if such a thing is possible. Both batting for Putin, but Johnson pretends to be on our side to sabotage us from within. But whether or not Trump can be persuaded to support Ukraine in some meaningful way or not, the result of yesterday's summit, although it didn't cover all the ground needed, was still that Europe is now going to step up to wean itself off American military support. A breach in the transatlantic alliance now exists, and as it widens, and that of course is now all but certain, the Conservatives will have to decide on which side of the breach they are on. Most have already decided, hence why Badenoch said what she said yesterday, I think. And now consider all the decisions they're going to have to make. See, they can no longer attack close cooperation with the EU because this is essentially tooling up to take on Russia. We are going to have to work on joint procurement in order to make our limited defence budgets go further. That means we're going to need enhanced trade with the EU. Know what that means? At some point, it's going to happen anyway, but at some point, we're going to have to start talking about those trade barriers of being outside the single market. And the Conservatives will have to reconsider things in a world where frictionless trade in Europe becomes more useful. They may even have to reevaluate the characters. Donald Tusk, very much at the forefront of this push to get Europe to tool up to take on Russia. The right wing can try to ignore him, but the public will see him as a crucial ally in the most important issue of the day for many people. It will be increasingly difficult to attack him because of his former role as EU Commission President. He's on our side, and any on the right wing who attack people like him are going to be seen to be attacking us. His successor, Ursula von der Leyen, is presenting a plan this week for hundreds of billions of extra defence spending. Can't see her as not being on our side. As for Macron, he is shoulder to shoulder with Britain in pushing for a Ukraine defence plan which Trump will accept. There's a sense in which Brexit was cursed from the start. A series of international events which exposed the folly of trying to be this tiny isolated island cut off from the world. But the Tories kept trying to argue that black was white. Some were accusing Sunak of a Brexit betrayal just because he talked to the EU about how to implement the deal they agreed to on leaving the EU. And of course, they and the papers attacked Starmer over every meeting ever held with European leaders. And there have been many. But after just a few weeks of their, let's face it, their preferred presidential candidate taking office, it's all turned upside down. Almost every newspaper front page I've seen today is presenting Starmer as a leader. The Sun and the Mail keep him to like a single line on their front page, but the Times, the Telegraph, the Express all present Starmer to the nation as building a united effort in Europe to help Ukraine. And this is not something that's going to pass. We can't just like fill the void which Trump is trying to leave overnight. This is it now. This is it for years. Brexit's dead. The Tories just need to realise it and we can move on. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.